Welcome to today's seminar on AssertThat, BDD, Cucumber and test management for Jira. You've got myself, Nick, and Glib on the call, and what we're going to do today is walk through all of the core functionality. I'll be covering setup, how to add features and scenarios through AssertThat. We'll talk about how to link the scenarios to Jira issues. We'll then talk about how you manage scenarios at scale using Scenario Manager. Then moving on to reporting, so we'll cover the traceability report and test plan reports. Then finally talk about dashboard gadgets. Glib will then pick up and start talking about the test automation integration and the test automation reporting components as well. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat and we'll discuss them at the end of the session. For the purpose of the demo, we will be using Jira Cloud. The functionality that we're going to cover off today is available on Jira Cloud, Data Center and server versions. Some of the screens, as you're probably aware, are slightly different for the different Jira versions there, but the core functionality of the plugin is the same across the different platforms. Okay, so let's go straight into this then. We'll go into the AssertThat configuration. When you've installed the plugin, you'll need to go into the AssertThat configuration page, which can be found under Project Settings, Apps, AssertThat Integration. You'll find the AssertThat configuration. So the plugin is enabled, disabled on a project by project basis. So to do this, you just switch the toggle here on and off, very simple. Talk through some of the options available in the config as they will become more apparent as we go through some of the core functionality. So scenario syntax validation, what this is when you are adding scenarios, you're typing in new scenarios, they could be manual, they could be automated, they need to conform to the standard configuration setup, so given, when, then, it is the syntax. If that syntax is incorrect, so if you're missing a given or when on a line, it will flag up and say that the syntax is incorrect there. So when you're jotting down ideas and so on as to what you think the scenarios are you're going to test for a user story, perhaps as part of your Three Amigos or after your Three Amigos session, then it's quite useful not to have that enabled. So for manual scenarios, we have that set to toggled off. For automated scenarios, we have that toggled on, and that's obviously key for when you start downloading your scenarios to your test automation frameworks and being used by Cucumber. Then obviously you want the syntax to be correct, otherwise your automated tests will fail. Going on to the next one there, independent scenario execution. So in AssertThat, you set up your scenarios, your features within the plugin. You then link those scenarios through to Jira issues. That could be user stories, tasks, epics, and you can have scenarios linked to many, Jira issues. When you come to execute those for manual ones, you could have it linked to, say, user story 1 and user story 2 with it set to independent, with it toggled on. It effectively means you could have that scenario passed in user story 1 and failed in user story 2. If you have it toggled off, if you change it in one, it will change in the other. Okay, AssertThat test plans. So AssertThat test plans is a specific Jira issue type. And the key difference here is that when you have scenarios linked to the AssertThat test plan and you move that AssertThat test plan to closed status, the scenario status will be locked. So in effect, you can go back into that one in 6 months' time. You won't be able to edit the status of those scenarios, but you'll be able to see what was the status of the scenarios when you completed the testing and moved that AssertThat test plan to done. The other toggle on here is related to enable cloning, and what this means is if you've executed a test plan and you want to repeat exactly the same scenarios in your next cycle, for example, clone that test plan. Those scenarios will be linked automatically to that new AssertThat test plan, and obviously the status will be reset to no run, but it means that you can set up test plans very quickly like that. API access credentials, this is all related to integration with your test automation frameworks, which Glib will cover later on. Automated results filtering. So the typical workflow that we follow is you will write your scenarios, BDD scenarios and so on within the plugin. You'll link them to user stories or whatever your Jira issue type, whatever your Jira workflow looks like. When you're happy with those scenarios and you've kind of written your executable specifications, what you then want to do is download those scenarios into your test automation framework. You do that using the custom APIs and integrations that we have within AssertThat. You download those, tests will execute in your framework, and then you import the results back into the plugin, the cucumber.json file. When that gets imported back in, it will link it to those scenarios, link the scenarios to the user stories that they're associated with. If for whatever reason that scenario no longer exists in the plugin, in AssertThat, then we've got this filter here to say that we'll load them anyway, which is by default, they'll get loaded, and you just have a missing scenario tag next to the actual execution. Alternatively, if it can't find it, it won't load it, but that's up to you whether you want that toggle turned on or not. Other options here we've got is around the language. We've got a number of languages available at the moment. If you need others which you can't find on the list there, please do reach out to us at our support@assertthat.com email. We'll then go back into the project and you'll see a new tab on the left hand side called features, and this is where the core functionality of the AssertThat plugin is. So we'll take a look in there. I'd already got some scenarios and so on loaded, so hence why you can see quite a few features and scenarios loaded for this one. Let's talk about a few of the key components here. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the main area of the AssertThat plugin. You've got the features section here, which is where we add new features. You can then click in the features and it'll come up with a screen where you can add your scenarios. You've got Scenario Manager, which is where you manage bulk updates of scenarios. Automation report, test plan report, traceability matrix, and we've got the config button over here, which takes you to the AssertThat configuration page, which is where we've just come from. So if I wanted to import some existing features, very simply I go to upload feature, choose the feature that I want to import. I'm going to click on this one here, it'll upload it, upload complete. Another option you've got here is override existing. So if I click on that toggle there and again try and override it, what this will effectively do, it'll import it and update it. So if I didn't have that toggle set, what would have happened there? It would have said this feature already exists in the plugin and it won't load it. Obviously I've said override existing, so it will override it. So it gives you the option there to update things. Okay. So we've now imported a new feature. If I had, if I've got lots to load, it's very simple to bulk copy them in like that. If, for example, I wanted to add a new feature, I'm just going to do it from here. So new feature added from Assert. That I could add my description here if I wanted to. Click on save. And that's as simple as that to add new features and so on. So I've now got a blank feature. You can see here it doesn't have any tags, so I can add a new tag. I'm just going to call that one test. And you can see in here these numbers. So what the numbers on the right hand side here represent of each of the features is the number of manual and automated tests. So you can see this is the new one I just created. There aren't any new scenarios and in there currently. If I wanted to take a look at this one here, I could see that there's 5 manual and no automated ones in there. So it's quite useful for quickly showing, well, where which feature does have all of my scenarios in, saves you actually clicking into it and viewing it. A couple of the points here: if you wanted to download all the features, download the files as into your local storage system. You can obviously, there's other ways you can do that through the integrations, through the APIs, but if you just wanted to download them from here, you can do that as well. Similarly, on the 3 buttons here, you've got the option to download individual features as well, or delete or edit the actual title of the feature. Quick filters, so quickly cover this. So What we've got here is the ability to search for features um, within this screen here. Some of our clients have many hundreds, thousands, almost of features within this screen here, and obviously to search for them could be quite challenging. So we provide the options here to filter by tag expression. And it's filtering now for all of the feature tags with test in it, and also you can add things in here like let's put in execution, and it should just return the individual one there, and there we go. And if I wanted to save that view, I click on this button here, and now I've got some options here to switch between my favorites filters. So a great way of being able to quickly switch between the features that you're interested in or working on at a particular point in time. Okay, let's remove that and go back to the standard screen. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll jump into one of the features and we'll start adding some scenarios to there. Okay, so in this feature, you can see you've got the feature name, the description, you've got background, so I could add a background description here if I wanted to. I've got background steps that I can add in here, so the background steps get run for each of the scenarios which are in that feature when you're running from your automation framework. So we can start adding some here. What I'm going to do first, though, actually, is to add a new scenario. So that's the new scenario title done. When I start typing in the steps, so given a access to, I'm just going to make one up, have an access to S3 when so this is where you can continue to write out. If it's a new set of steps that you're writing, you could continue to curate them like that. Alternatively, if you want to use existing steps, then you can just start typing in 3 letters of the a word which is in that step, and then hit the shortcuts, control space, and it's now listed all of the steps which has the word "the" in there. And as you can see, you can very simply start building up your scenarios, reusing steps. Obviously, do it using this approach means that you won't start, making lots of steps with slightly different wording, and therefore it becomes quite complex to maintain and so on. This is a great way of making sure that those kind of problems don't exist. Alternatively, we've got a toggle autocomplete. So autocomplete is another way that we can, easily drag and drop steps in if we wanted to set them up like this. So I'll just literally drag them across like that. So we'll do a few of those. So I can, go like this and so on. And you can quite easily build up your steps that way if there's certain steps you want to reuse. So all there kind of to help, make it easy to kind of build things up quite quickly and reuse steps, which is key to keeping, tight control over your scenarios and so on. A couple of other points to talk about here. So adding tags, you can add scenario tags, scenario, and it searches for existing ones. So again, you don't start creating brand new tags when there's one that you need already exists. Okay, you can start doing things like that. Key core functionality, if you were to delete a scenario, move it to another feature or clone it, you've got the options to do that here. And just mention something about this one now. If you wanted to switch between it being a manual and an automated task, then quite simply click on the button here. What it does, it switches between the two. Okay, we'll just change that back. So that's the key functionality within the feature itself. You can also download the feature from here if you wanted to view that and so on. Okay, so what we've done there, we've created a feature, we've added scenarios to that feature, we've added steps, we've added some tags. What we want to do now perhaps would be to link this scenario to a Jira issue, and we'll use user stories. So to do that, I'm just going to create a new user story. Okay, just need to set that. Okay, and I'm going to just put in there, so AC1, AC2. Okay, so what I've set up here is a new, hypothetical user story. It's got a couple of acceptance criteria in here, and the situation you may be in now is, well, okay, now I want to have my 3 Amigos session, and we're going to talk to that, so we're going to add some scenarios to that. So various ways that you can link scenarios to the user story. So I can do it from here. So I'm quickly going to go in here and go, right, I'm going to link, I want to see this scenario here linked to the new user story that I've set up. So I'm just going to auto select that one from the list. It's found that demo 122 exists, and I'm now going to have a look at demo 122. Okay, so that's taken me to the user story. I can see the acceptance criteria here, but what I want to do is link my AssertThat BDD scenarios to it. So the first time you go to the user story, you'll need to click on the link here. Okay, so we've clicked on the acceptance tests, which enables the AssertThat functionality on issue view. You'll just need to do that once. I can now see I've got the feature, I've got the scenario. So what I may want to do now is, say, part of my 3 Amigo session, start adding new scenarios. So I can select existing ones. So I'm going to search for AssertThat. So this is going to pull back all of the features that have AssertThat in the title. So I'm going to select that one there. I could do some further filtering on here. I could start looking for particular tags and so on, or I can just select the scenarios that I want to link to this user story. So that's done. If I wanted to start adding new scenarios as part of this session, I'm going to say, right, do I want to create a feature or search for an existing one? I'm going to add it to an existing one. I'm going to add it to the one which had Jenkins in there, and I'm going to give it a new scenario name. So new scenario. Okay, and again, I could then start linking my steps into it the same way that we do on the other pages. Okay, so beauty of this is that obviously, as part of those sessions that you have with the wider team, you may want to be viewing, all the details on one page. You've got the acceptance criteria, you've got the user story details, you've got the current examples, which we're going to test the scenarios that we use to test against this story. Everyone has got access to the same information on the same page. You haven't got some things on Jira, some things on files or text files or something like that. Everything's on one page. It makes it easy. It improves and helps collaboration. Okay, so what are the other things we've got on this page? We've got the ability to unlink scenarios. We can switch these scenarios between automated and manual. And the other key point on here, we've got the opportunity to run the tests. So what we're going to do is click on this. We tried to keep this as simple as possible. So let's update the state of this. So test ran and passed in SIT. We had a comment on there. We click passed. Simple as that. Let's have a look, expand the scenario. You can see in here, you've got the steps that you ran, you've got the status, what were the steps when I executed this, and you can see it's run by myself on this date and this timestamp. Okay, if I wanted to change the status again, so test failed. Again, update that again. And you can see that the test has now failed. Show me the steps, and you can see what the status of things are there. Okay. You've got an option here to link into the failed test. What was the bug here that you connected it to? So I'm just going to link it to another issue type there, and you can see here you can quite simply link and have the association there between the failed test defects, and you've got all the information there on one screen. Other things to say. So we've obviously passed and failed some of the manual tests here. From an automation perspective, you won't be able to just obviously update the status there. When your test automation framework executes, what you'll do is use the custom APIs and integrations to load the cucumber.json file back into AssertThat. The status will then automatically be updated on here. So where you'd have for automated tests, the status will get updated here, and also within this open test status, this represents all of the scenarios linked to this user story, and it gives you a quick high level overview of what the status of the scenarios are against each of the user story. So that's quite useful when you may have many scenarios linked. A couple of other things to talk about here, the ability to expand and collapse on here. So that just makes it easy to kind of open and close stuff. So if you're trying to look at, what's the overall state of things, I just want to use the scenarios. Alternatively, you may want to expand things to show the steps and so on. That's all available from these buttons here on the side and above at the top here. Okay, so far, we've created features, created scenarios, we've linked them to user stories. What else may we want to do? Well, what if I want to do some bulk updates? Say I've been working within this project here for 6 months and I want to start updating the steps. I may want to update things like my tags and how I'm using those. How do I do that without having to update each of the features independently? So I'm going to click on the Features tab back here. That's going to take us to the main AssertThat pages, and I'm going to go to Scenario Manager. Okay, Scenario Manager lists out all of the scenarios within the project. It's also got other key information, the mode, link to, tags, and so on. And there's a few key things that you can do in here. So to start off with, you would set how many you want to display, and that can go up to a maximum of 500 scenarios. At the moment, I've only got 48 in this project, and I'm just going to leave it at 10 for simplicity. You can also download here, so if you wanted to get a high-level view of all of the scenarios available, you can download in CSV formats here. So we're going to start filtering on some of the features that contain a key search term that I'm interested in. So I'm just going to do all the features which have AssertThat in the name. I'm going to look for tags which have test in them as well. Okay, and it's returned 3 scenarios. What I may want to do then is to make changes to those. So I'm going to go to Edit Selected. I've got a few options here. I can add tags or delete tags from those. I can change the mode. So if I want to make them all automated, I could change them all to automated. Link to, I could say, right, I'm going to add a new link to them. I want all of these to be linked to demo 122, I think it was. Okay, and we'll just click on perform there, and it will update it, and I'll add the link to demo 122 there. You can see it's added 122 to each of those there. And then finally, the other option was to change the steps. So you could then start searching for individual steps and say, well, this is the original step and this is the new one that I wanted to change to. This is a really quick way of updating all the steps where it could be linked. You could have a step across multiple scenarios and features. It will take quite some time to try and find those steps, but this gives you the ability to update them all quite quickly. Okay, the other key thing that you can do from here is create and link scenarios to test plans or any Jira issue type. So we're going to create a test plan now. As I mentioned before, the key difference between AssertThat test plans and other Jira issue types is when it moves to done, it's locked and you won't be able to make updates to it. So we're going to go new AssertThat test plan. And you'd use test plans typically for, if you've got a set of scenarios that you'd like to run for a release or, on a periodic basis. This is an easy way to kind of group those together into a single entity and to continue to have them there. As I mentioned before as well, it's quite easy to clone test plans as well, and it brings across those same scenarios, so quite easy to set up. So we'll have a quick look now at this test plan. Again, I'm going to click on the AssertThat acceptance test here. And it's listed out all of my scenarios linked to it. We're going to run these. And we'll have this one failed. Okay, so all looks the same as before. Key difference now, when I move this to done, we get the message here to say assert that scenario status cannot be edited when the Jira ticket is marked as resolved. So if I try and update these now, I can't make any changes to them. If I wanted to use the execution, see the execution status, expand it, and I can view all the details there, but I can't make any changes to it. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll go back to the feature screen again. And here we've covered Features tab, we've covered Scenario Manager. Glib is going to talk through the automation report, so we'll quickly flash this up on screen now, but this will be something that Glib covers in more detail later. This is for when you import your cucumber.json file back into the plugin, how you manage those test automation results. We'll jump to Traceability Matrix next. So Traceability report is really useful. What we're doing here is we're looking at all of the Jira issues and the scenarios which are linked to them. So in this report, it only looks at Jira tickets which are part of this project, and it doesn't include AssertThat test plans. They are included in a separate report page here. So really anything in this project, which any Jira issue type apart from AssertThat test plans will be displayed here. So two ways to display the list. You can put in a JQL or you can use a save filter. We'll just use a very simple JQL filter here. So project. And this is going to display all of the Jira issues in the project and the scenarios which are linked to them. Okay, you do quite clever things with this. You can also change your JQL filter to do things, for example, like only look in your current sprints. We have some specific AssertThat properties as well, which is available on our conference pages. So you can just pull back, Jira issues which have AssertThat scenarios linked to them, for example. There's things like that that you can do. That's all available and detailed on our conference page as well. But for now, we'll just pull it to this back with a very simple filter, project equals demo. If I wanted to download that to a CSV file, I can do that here. If you wanted to display more in that CSV file, you'd need to increase this to the 500 records to pull them all back in. The actual charts themselves, let's just talk briefly about those. So overall coverage, this is what this is saying is that, what the filters pull back here is a total of 33 Jira issues. We can see that 10 have scenarios linked to them and 23 don't. Out of those 10 Jira issues, we've got a number of scenarios linked to them. In total, we've got 27. 10 of those are automated and 17 are manual. And then finally, the status. So the status of those, so we can see the execution status has 19 no run, a number failed, and a couple, and I think it's just one pass there. These are interactive, these charts as well. So if you just wanted to exclude the past ones there, or perhaps you wanted to exclude the failed ones there, you can see just the no runs. Similarly, if you wanted to just look at the automated tests scenarios, you could just click on that and you could see the numbers just for the automated, and similarly for the manual ones as well, just like that. These little things here, what they're doing is they're shareable links. So if I click on that and I wanted to share that with a colleague through Slack or Teams or whatever, very quickly copy that and you can send that to, click on that and then it automatically copies the link to this page and this filter, and it will send that to your colleagues to view. Okay. We move to test plan reports. So again, it's this page is only going to display test plans within this project. When you go to this page for the first time, you'll need to click on configure charts and select the charts that you want to view. So we'll do that. We'll click on save. And you've got a couple of useful charts here just to talk through, what are the trends, what are the number of the scenarios, etc. So here you've got the number of scenarios for each of the test plans that are linked to. Again, here you're looking at the execution status over time linked to each of these test plans as well. Okay, again, you use JQL to filter for individual or specific test plans, or save filters as well. And again, if you wanted to download a CSV file, that's available from the links there as well. Similar interactive chart, so to exclude certain statuses, you can do that just by clicking on the icons here. Okay. Final piece I want to cover was to talk about the dashboard gadgets. So I've got one saved here. In total, we have 6. However, we are making a lot of changes to this space all the time as new requests come through. So this may change if you're looking at this recording in the future. So you'll recognize some of these charts from the traceability reports. So we've got overall coverage, automated manual coverage, and the scenario execution status, effectively meaning the same as what was discussed previously. So overall coverage, so in your JQL filter, which you use as part of this dashboard gadget, how many of those Jira issues have scenarios linked to them? Out of those scenarios which are linked to the issues, what proportion of those are manual and which ones are automated? You can kind of play around with the charts as well, the interactive charts as well. And then finally, out of those, all of those scenarios which are linked to the Jira issues, what is the execution status of those? And again, you can interactively update these. All of these, the key difference between these ones here, what you saw previously on the traceability report, is you can go cross-project here, which is really, really beneficial if you are looking at, a bigger program of work. To edit these, same process as you would update any Jira dashboard gadget. Go into here, click on configure. You've got options here, so change the title, change the filter. I'm just looking at demo project, but you can go cross project here. Similar principle for these ones over here. You do get a few different options here on these ones. So again, filter could be cross project. You can choose to display just the automated or the manual ones if that's what you wanted to do here. Okay. Let's have a look at a couple of the other dashboard gadgets that we've got. So again, I mentioned if you have got a big organization or a big program of work, you may have scenarios linked to multiple projects, and maybe you wanted to see, well, which of my projects are extensively using the BDD processes. Then you can easily see, well, actually this project here has got many scenarios linked to it, etc., etc., and a quick way of viewing, who's using it. Automated run statistics. Let's open up that so it's a bit more visible. This is, Glib will talk through this, but effectively you're looking at your imported cucumber.json file. You can see that this has had a number of test runs imported to it on the 27th of March. You can see the status of those, the duration of those test runs, and you can see the associated metadata with those reports. And then finally, we'll talk about number of times in the status. So this is quite an interesting dashboard gadget that was requested specifically by one of our customers. They wanted to see, well, which ones are my problem scenarios, which ones go through from pass to fail many times, because if that's the case, we've got a bit of a flaky scenario, flaky test there, and that's one that we may need to look at in more detail. In what we can see on the screen here is that this one here has been executed 4 times and it's failed 4 times. So obviously needs to be looked at for different purposes, but really to show you the ones which are flip-flopping between statuses and so on, which may be a bit of a problem. Okay, that covers all of the key functionality that I wanted to talk about. We've covered what's in the we've covered setting up new features, setting up new scenarios. We've then linked those to Jira Jira user stories. We've created test plans. We've executed the tests. We've looked at the reporting. We've looked at the traceability. And we've looked at some of the dashboard gadgets. We're now going to pass over to Glib, who's going to talk through how you integrate with your test automation frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So in this section, we'll go through AssertThat integration with existing or new test automation framework based on Cucumber. For that purpose, we've developed a range of libraries and plugins that can be easily integrated into your test automation framework and used for downloading feature files from Jira plugin and uploading test automation results back after the test execution. The Libraries themselves can be found on our GitHub page, and as well as the example projects for each of the plugins and libraries. For the purpose of this demo, we'll go through Maven integration using Maven build tool with the Java framework using Cucumber as the test automation tool. So let's go through the installation first. In order to integrate the plugin, so you need to copy the plugin definition into your POM file together with some basic configuration. Let's go through the configuration in more details. So here we see the project ID, access key, and secret key. Those are used for the both executions, downloading features and uploading report. Those properties can be found on the project configuration page in the API access credentials section. So project ID can be copied from here straight away together with the access key, and the secret key needs to be generated. Next, we have the two executions. First is downloading features, and that's the ID of that execution. That executes features goal, and it is executing on the pre-integration test phase by default if you're running your test on the integration test phase. If you're running your test on the Maven test phase, then you need to change that to run on the generate test resources. So it executes before the test. And some of the basic configuration for the feature downloads listed here. So output folder is the folder where the features will be downloaded to. JQL, that is a filter which we can specify to limit the number of scenarios that will be downloaded. So the plugin will download only scenarios which are linked to issues which are following this JQL filter. Mode, automated, manual, or both. By default, it will download only automated scenarios. Tags, similar to how the Cucumber can filter the scenarios which will be picked up for the execution. We can pre-filter them on the download phase as well using the Cucumber tag expression. Numbered, this is a property which controls whether we want to add an ordinal before the feature name on download or not. Enabled, so we can enable and disable this phase, and clean up features just cleans up the output folder, which we've seen here, before downloading the new features into it. The second execution is a report that by default executes on the post-integration test phase, and that specifies JSON report folder. That is the folder where your Cucumber JSON is stored to after the test execution. JSON include pattern. So if you don't generating multiple JSONs as part of your execution, so for example, you're running features in parallel, and for each feature, a separate JSON is generated. So then you can further filter which JSONs you want to pick up from this folder. Type Cucumber by default is Cucumber, and also we support Karate type of reports. Run name, so that can be updated. By default, it's timestamp in this format, but you can specify like custom run name, like critical tests, smoke, regression, cycle for release X, Y, that, and so on. Metadata, some additional pieces of information about describing this test execution, for example, build, UAT, user who executed it, anything else in a JSON format. JQL, so again, here we specify the JQL to limit the number of scenarios which will be downloaded, and here we are specifying JQL to limit the number of issues that will be updated with the test results. So only issues that fall into this JQL will be updated with the test automation results of this particular test execution. And the run ID, if we want to add to an existing test execution, we can specify the ID of the test execution, and instead of creating new in the framework, the existing one will be updated. So that's the basic configuration, and let's switch back to the framework itself, and we see how it looks like in the test automation framework. So I've copied the plugin definition here in my POM file. specified project ID, access key, and secret key. For the sake of this demo, let's go and generate new secret key. Copy that, paste it in here. So then we have two executions. Here we filter in the tags, smoke and demo, and the key, the JQL specifying that the issue key is demo119. And that is all the scenarios that are linked to this demo119 and have smoke and demo tags will be downloaded. And the report, we specify target folder. That's where report allocated. So target report cucumber JSON, and we also supply the cucumber JSON as a pattern. So type cucumber and some additional information about my execution environment. So like, for example, some IP address, build number, and branch. Let's get back into the plugin now. So here is our feature that we intended to download and execute. We see that it has demo and smoke tags. And also let's go into the feature itself, find the scenario, and we'll link it to demo 119. So we make sure it will fit in the filter that we supplied in the JQL section of the plugin configuration. Here is our scenario. I've made it. It was executed already, but what we can do now is to run it again. And on this stage, on the generate test resources phase, the features will be downloaded to the features folder, picked up by the cucumber glue, which is specified here. So we are pointing cucumber glue to the features folder where they will be downloaded, executed, and the cucumber JSON file will be saved to the report folder. This is a simple test. Just for demonstration purposes, it will go to Google. Let's have a look what it does. So it's searching for AssertThat on Google, goes to homepage, search for AssertThat, and it checks that the name of the plugin corresponds to the expected value. So features, we can see the feature was downloaded to this folder with our tags and the additional demo 119, which represents the link to the story that we just created. Let's give it a second to run. As you can see, test was executed, failed, and after the execution, the report phase uploaded the test report back into Jira. So now we can navigate to the test automation report. And we can see the record for the test that we just executed. So for each execution, a new record as a table will be created, summarizing the steps, status, scenario status, success rate, some metadata that we passed along as well. Let's stop for a second and go through the charts. So we have a number of charts here representing the continuous growth of the test over time, scenario status, step status, trend, and the run duration, which is a useful metric to keep an eye on, especially during UI test execution. And the last one is analysis progress. So that represents the percentage of the tests which were failed and were analyzed in each particular executions. So green represents that all the tests were fully analyzed, and amber represents that there are still some tests yet to be analyzed. So like in our last execution, one failed, so we need to go through and have a look into that and categorize it based on the root cause of the failure. On the next page, we can see that we have statistics about the features that we executed. In our case, it's just one. If you have more, they will be listed here. And digging further more, we have the scenario results, which summarizes the status of the steps, stack trace in case of failure. So we see here in our case that the title wasn't quite correct, and any embeddings that you add alongside the Cucumber JSON that will be displayed there. That could be images, log files, HTML embeddings, anything that you can embed using Cucumber. Then on the right-hand side, we can see that the scenario can be assigned to someone. I'll assign it to myself. And also we can then set the root cause of the failure. In our case, that's automation defect, say refactor, expected result, save. Additionally, to this screen, what we have here is the failures only report. And once I assign it to myself, I can go to this screen and I can see that filter by assigned to myself only, to me only, and here will be the list of all the scenarios that are assigned to me. So in some organization, we've seen that the test lead comes in the morning, for example, after regression, and assigns all the failed scenarios to his team. So each individual member can go onto the failure report, filter assigned to him only, and go through the test and categorize them and set the resolution status. Once that is done, we get back to our report summary and we can see that analysis is completed. So as for the test automation execution, I think we've briefly covered everything apart from the execution status on the user story itself, which we can see on the each individual scenario. So for manual ones, as Nick showed, this can be manually set on the user story, and for automated tests, the results will be imported and each of the stories will be updated with the up-to-date status here, and execution history can be found here as well. So that is our execution that we've just done. And the report, the view details link will take us to the actual test report. All the documentation on the test automation integration can be found on our wiki. So that is either test automation integration sections or AssertThat REST API. So if you don't find the particular library that you need for your language and build tool combination, then you can use the API exposed by the plugin to directly call download features API and upload report as well. So we have some Postman collections attached to this page. We can be explored furthermore and utilized as an integration point. Thank you for your attention, and any questions, please feel free to ask.